Hello, welcome to another video. Please like, share and subscribe for more amazing story. True God in Another Worlds, Tensura x Tbate, by Tempest_King_20. Chapter 38. Home. Arthur Lewin Pav. As I gradually became aware of my surroundings, a sharp and unbearable pain spread throughout my body, causing tears to involuntarily stream down my face. I felt completely immobilized as I struggled to move, and my attempts to get up were met with resistance from every muscle, pore, and fiber of my body. The pain felt like a scalding blade sawing slowly through me, leaving me feeling weak and helpless. The pain was soon eclipsed by mounting frustration as I realized I couldn't sustain the power of Realmheart for much longer. Unlike Ri and Sylvia, who effortlessly wielded this ability, I found myself grappling to uphold it for prolonged periods. A deep sigh escaped my lips, laced with the bitterness of my predicament. And then, a voice broke through the haze of my suffering, calling out to me from beside me. "You're awake," the voice exclaimed, brimming with relief. Summoning every ounce of determination, I fought against the overwhelming urge to slip back into unconsciousness, focusing on that voice. Yet, for a brief moment, there was only silence, an echo of emptiness. Struggling against the agony that threatened to consume me, I managed to produce a few strained sounds. "Glove." "My glove," I rasped, my head turning to the side to avoid choking on the thick pool of blood filling my mouth. "What about your glove?" Elijah's face came into view as he gently removed the glove, a treasured gift from my parents, from my trembling hand. "Break one of the sea crystals on the glove and give me," I pleaded, the waves of pain intensifying once more, making me fear that I might succumb to darkness before he could follow my feeble instructions. "Step back a little." Sensing the urgency, Jasmine commanded Elijah to step back slightly, his compliance wordless yet swift. She then approached me, her voice laced with understanding as she asked, "Is this still difficult?" Unable to respond coherently, I merely nodded, the flicker of hope igniting within me as Jasmine acknowledged the extent of my torment. "I see," she murmured softly. Jasmine was well acquainted with my beast will, as did the rest of my family and the people close to us, but she was the one who knew most about it. Sylvia and Sylvia sighed. A pleasant surge of soothing light enveloped my body, and the once unbearable pain eased enough so I could calm down a little. I tried to get up, but my body, once again, refused to listen. Lying motionless on my back, I assessed the situation now, since my cognitive abilities were no longer completely focused on enduring the pain. "Thank you." Words of gratitude escaped my lips, and curved them into a faint smile, and my gratitude extended towards Jasmine for this temporary respite amidst the storm. Taking a look around, I realized that we were in a small, dome-shaped enclosure conjured up by Elijah. The only source of light came from the crackling fire in the center, casting flickering shadows on the walls. It was a cozy, yet mysterious atmosphere that surrounded us. As I glanced around, my eyes fell upon the slumbering forms of our group. They lay sprawled out on makeshift beds, their breathing steady and calm. It seemed that only Elijah and Jasmine were awake, their faces illuminated by the dancing flames. Elijah's expression was a mix of surprise and curiosity as he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't think that the legendary masked swordsman, would be someone around my age." His words struck me like a bolt of lightning, causing me to momentarily freeze. Instinctively, my hand shot up to my face, seeking reassurance that my mask was still securely fastened. Finding the cold, smooth surface of the mask against my fingertips, I let out a sigh of relief. How had Elijah seen my face? My mind raced with questions, searching for answers. "I saw your face when you fell," Elijah continued, a slight tinge of embarrassment apparent in his voice. He absent-mindedly scratched his cheek, a nervous habit that I had come to associate with him. But Jasmine brought the mask back quickly. It all suddenly made sense. Jasmine must have acted swiftly to preserve my anonymity. Gratitude swelled within me as I looked towards Jasmine, who sat quietly by the fire, her eyes fixed on Elijah and me. "I see," I responded, my voice barely audible within the enclosure. My gaze shifted to the blade resting beside me, Dawn's Ballad, a faithful companion in my countless battles. In the midst of my thoughts, a sudden voice invaded my mind. It was my brother, his concerned tone cutting through the chaos in my head. "You're awake now. Are you okay?" he asked, a hint of worry lacing his words. Feeling a mix of relief and frustration, I replied, "I'm fine now, except for the fact that we were betrayed. Anger surged within me, threatening to boil over at any moment. But my brother, reassured me in his calm, steady voice. "Don't worry, I'll take care of it," he declared. His words sought to soothe my troubled mind, infusing me with a sense of trust that I desperately clung to. "What I want from you now is to stay there for a while." Curiosity tugged at my thoughts, and I couldn't help but inquire about his plans. "What are you planning for?" I asked, my voice laced with a mixture of intrigue and caution. Ree's response was cryptic, leaving me to decipher his true intentions. "Nothing big really, at least until the time is right," he disclosed. His words hung in the air, heavy with hidden meaning. It suddenly dawned on me, a realization crashing through the fog in my mind. Ree's plan became clear. If he were to eliminate Lucas now, it would undoubtedly raise suspicions. After all, Lucas had betrayed us, and it would seem only natural for us to harbor ill intentions towards him. Ree would wait, biding his time until the situation had sufficiently calmed down. Only then would he strike, when the moment was opportune. The gravity of the situation weighed upon me, and I couldn't help but offer my cautious advice. "Just don't exaggerate too much," I warned, my voice tinged with concern for both our sakes. Acknowledging my words, Ree responded, his voice filled with determination. "This is what I have to say," he declared before abruptly severing our mental connection. "I will do my job now, so wait a little." And with those final words, he vanished from my mind, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a lingering sense of anticipation. Looking up at the bewildered expression on Elijah's face and the understanding glint in Jasmine's eyes, I couldn't help but voice my confusion. Trying to start a conversation and break the heavy silence that hung over us, I spoke up. "I thought that only dwarves possessed the ability to manipulate metal. But even then, I was taught that their power was limited to existing metal, not the power to create and conjure it," I remarked, my voice breaking the silence between us. A tired chuckle escaped Elijah's lips as he sank further down, weariness etched across every line on his face. The weight of what he had witnessed seemed to press down on his shoulders. "So much for keeping secrets, huh?" he said, his voice tinged with a mix of fatigue and resignation. Relieved, I laughed in agreement. "Tell me about it." But the relief was short-lived as Elijah's curiosity got the better of him, and he pressed on. "All right, but you have to explain what the hell happened back there. Just for a moment, your hair turned white. And your eyes. They were emitting a brilliant purple hue. I even noticed these strange, glowing symbols that appeared on your body." I nodded in understanding, allowing him to pour out his questions, the weight of his curiosity heavy in the air. As I prepared myself to share my secret, Jasmine took a step back, giving us space, disappearing into the distance. "I'm from the Darv Kingdom, but I'm not really sure where I originally came from. The elder that took care of me since I was little always avoided the subject of my parents, so I never got a clear answer. The only memories of my childhood came in painful flashes that feel like they've been locked away somehow. About a year ago, when I had awakened, I created such a big implosion that my whole room just vanished. After getting trained for a little while, I found out I was abnormally better in earth attribute spells than any other elements. To the point where I wouldn't be able to cast anything but the most elementary spells in water, fire, or wind. Even now." Elijah stared blankly at the palms of his hands. "Since I had awakened, my mana core has been condensing all on its own at a rapid pace. I don't even need to meditate for some reason. The elder that took care of me sent me to the kingdom of Sapin as a representative and told me to make a name for myself and get along with the humans, but honestly, I don't know why I'm doing this. After I broke into the dark orange stage, I had this weird feeling surge up in my body, and before I knew it, a field of metal spikes conjured around me. I happened to be alone when it occurred, so thankfully, I didn't kill anyone. But ever since then I've been pretty careful, and scared. Scared of what I am and scared of what I can do. I was excited at first about how strong I could be, but even now, I can barely control my powers. You know. I thought maybe I was half dwarf at one point, but I just don't know what I am anymore." I stared at Elijah, noticing that his hands were trembling as he quickly squeezed them into fists to control himself. I just laid back, silently. I wasn't going to pretend like I understood him, and anything I said now would just be empty words of comfort. Sometimes, I get this feeling. Like what I can do right now isn't even the limit. I know it may sound weird, but I get this itch that there's something more to me deep inside, and that once I can control that power, I'll know what I really am. I'm sorry, haha. This ended up being a therapy session for me, didn't it? And like that, the bespectacled boy that tried so hard to keep a stern, cold facade turned out to be fragile on the inside. I gritted my teeth as I willed my broken body to sit upright to face Elijah. Peering into the boy's eyes, I saw a trace of desperation but also gentleness, and a firm pride in himself that reassured my decision. Years of being a king, representing my country, meeting all different kinds of people. I got the hang of being able to see the type of person someone was, and my impression of Elijah was that he could be someone I could trust. I'm a quadra-elemental augmenter with 2 deviances. Ice and lightning, I stated in an even tone. Before he had the chance to even react to the landmine I had just set off, I continued. I'm also a beast tamer. What you saw back there was me releasing my beast will. The hand that Elijah had been leaning on slipped and his head crashed against the cold, hard steel. Holy, ouch. He got back up, rubbing his head. I thought I was a freak, but I guess you win. Wait. How old are you? He asked. I turned 11 a couple of months ago. No way. I'll be 12 in a few months. I don't know my exact birth date, but the elder just made my birthday the day he found me, January 10th. You know my name is Elijah, but I don't know yours. What's your name? He stuck out his hand as a sign of friendship. Grasping his hand, I responded with a pained smile. Arthur. Arthur Lewin, but just call me Art. For the next several hours, we exchanged stories. Elijah's childhood wasn't that eventful before his awakening. He stayed with the elders since the dwarf children weren't too fond of mingling with humans. Because of that, Elijah had spent most of his time reading various books. Listening to him talk and just hearing about his life, I could understand why he was a lot more mature for someone his age. He only talked with adults, mostly the elder that took care of him, and just living in a society where almost everyone would rather not have anything to do with you made him grow up a lot faster than he should have. Elijah's eyes sparkled with curiosity, his brows furrowed as he leaned in closer. By the way, where is Noir? From what I heard, you two have always been inseparable. I took a deep breath, feeling uneasy about lying to Elijah. I trusted him, but I wasn't sure how my brother would react if I revealed his true identity. Ree had always tried to maintain a degree of secrecy towards strangers, and even sometimes towards us. Summoning a deep breath, I fought to steady my voice. Noir. He's actually taking a little break at the moment. We haven't spoken in a while, I replied, my words laced with a faint uneasy undertone. The lie slid off my tongue like bitter honey, hoping Elijah wouldn't catch the deception in my eyes. I see, he replied, his voice laced with understanding. I breathed a sigh of relief, and with a subtle shift in my posture, I steered the conversation towards safer territory, hoping to distract Elijah and veer away from the subject that threatened to unravel everything. A few moments later, Jasmine returned, her footsteps quick and purposeful. I immediately sensed an undertone of urgency in her voice as she spoke, her words laced with determination. I need to talk to Note for a while, she said, turning towards Elijah and gesturing for him to give us some privacy. As he moved away, she conjured a sound barrier, a shimmering bubble of magic enveloping us, indicating that what she was about to share was of utmost importance. Taking a seat next to me, Jasmine's eyes met mine, her gaze intense. I talked to Ree, she began, her voice low and urgent. He told me about his plan. Caspian sent the guild team, she continued, her words heavy with implications, and Lucas told them we were dead. Instantly, a surge of anger coursed through my veins, fueled by the magnitude of Lucas's betrayal. But I quickly reined in my emotions, choosing to focus on the gravity of the situation. What are we going to do about it? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside. Jasmine's eyes gleamed with determination, her resolve evident. We will file a formal case against Lucas, she declared, her voice filled with unwavering confidence. And don't worry, Jackson will support us. Surely, even the Wykes family won't be foolish enough to confront both of us. A sense of relief washed over me, knowing that Jackson's support would undoubtedly bolster our cause and make it abundantly clear to our adversaries that challenging 2 formidable S-rank adventurers would be a futile endeavor. Yet, amidst my gratitude for Jackson's backing, a nagging curiosity tugged at the corners of my mind. I couldn't help but wonder about his newfound influence and power. Over time, he had transformed from a skilled adventurer to an influential figure whose reach rivaled that of Director Goodsky. Rumors swirled, whispering tales of his unmatched strength, leaving me pondering what the outcome of a battle between Jackson and Ri, both fighting at full strength, would truly be. And not to forget Jasmine, who, according to my brother, stood just a shade slightly weaker than Jackson. However, before I could delve deeper into my musings, an almost imperceptible sound of footsteps echoed in the distance. My senses sharpened instinctively, honing in on my hearing as I discerned the telltale signs of the approaching guild team. "They're here," Jasmine whispered, her voice low but urgent. Immediately, she sprang into action, moving swiftly to awaken our group from their slumber. The guild workers, well versed in their duties, swiftly attended to the injured members of our party, their actions a testament to their experience and skill. Observing their efficiency with admiration, I watched as they moved seamlessly, carrying out their tasks with utmost professionalism. Soon, one of the guild workers approached us, breaking my concentration. His voice was respectful as he addressed us. "Mr. Note, Ms. Jasmine, the guildmaster would like to meet you." Jasmine nodded in acknowledgement, her expression calm but resolute. "Understood, thank you," she replied before the man bowed slightly and left. We followed suit, Jasmine leading the way, with Elijah and I by her side as we made our way out of the dungeon, anticipation swirling in the air. 2 hours later, our weary group finally arrived at the guild hall, situated on the outskirts of the Beast Glades. Jasmine, Elijah, and I collapsed onto the comfortable couches in Caspian's office. Caspian, having temporarily relocated from his office in Zyrus to this branch. But just as we began to relax, the door to Caspian's office burst open, causing us all to startle. A group of burly, barrel-chested adventurers, masquerading as guards, filed into the room. And there, right in the midst of them, stood Lucas. "You guys managed to make it out alive." Caspian let out an audible sigh, clearly vexed by the boy's impertinence. His hand rested on his head as he shot me a meaningful glance, reminding me of the discussion we had earlier about keeping our composure in difficult situations. I felt my anger simmering beneath the surface, my hands subconsciously clenching tightly as a sign of my frustration. However, I knew better than to make a scene. Elijah, on the other hand, quickly sprang up from his seat, ready for confrontation. Meanwhile, Jasmine remained nonchalant, her eyes shut as she luxuriously reclined on the couch. Her demeanor portrayed complete disinterest, a stark contrast to the seething anger I was struggling to contain. Without hesitation, Lucas took a bold step forward. He swiftly slapped the guard in front of him, urging him to move aside. "I wonder how you managed to escape from that terror of a beast. Did you have to sacrifice someone else to save yours?" His taunting tone grated on my already frayed nerves. I could feel the tension in the room rise as those around me instinctively braced themselves for a confrontation. "Shut up, brat," Jackson interrupted, his voice slicing through the air like a sharp blade. His commanding tone, laced with a hint of menace, left no room for argument as he closed the distance between himself and Lucas. With a firm hand, he placed it on Lucas's shoulder, asserting his dominance. Standing right behind him were Sylvia and Lara, their presence adding weight to Jackson's words. Before Lucas could even articulate a response, he froze, his features contorting with shock as he locked eyes with Jackson. Recognition dawned upon him, and the color drained from his complexion, leaving him pale and vulnerable in the face of Jackson's powerful presence. "I suggest you leave now, kid," Jackson growled, his voice dripping with authority. Each word was a warning, a clear indication that he was unwilling to tolerate any defiance from Lucas. "Your fate is not my concern, but your actions will undoubtedly have consequences." The words hung in the air, suffocating the room with an intense silence. Lucas, overcome with fear, could only nod in response, his voice caught in his throat. With his heart pounding, he scurried out of the room, his departure hastened by the palpable terror that emanated from him. It was a satisfying sight to witness Lucas's hasty retreat, a testament to the Chapter 38 home power that Jackson wielded. As soon as Lucas was out of sight, Sylvia and Lara entered the room. Without hesitation, Sylvia rushed towards me, her arms outstretched, and wrapped me in a tight embrace. The warmth of her touch washed over me, offering a sense of comfort and security in the midst of chaos. "I was so worried," Sylvia murmured softly, her voice laced with genuine concern, as if the weight of the world had been lifted off her shoulders. I couldn't help but smile. "I'm fine," I reassured her, my voice filled with heartfelt appreciation. I returned her embracing, allowing myself to fully indulge in the solace of her presence, even if only for a fleeting moment. Lara, standing a few steps away, observed the reunion with a gentle smile playing on her lips. Her hand delightfully found its way to my head, patting it tenderly. "We're truly glad you're safe," she said, her voice laced with heartfelt sincerity. Her eyes, filled with genuine warmth, conveyed her genuine relief. Meanwhile, the unyielding gaze of Jackson shifted towards Caspian, his eyes flickering with determination. There was an undeniable sense of authority in his stance, a silent but powerful assertion of his intentions. "I trust you will honor your end of the bargain, Caspian," Jackson stated firmly, his voice carrying a demanding tone, yet layered with a thin veil of civility. It was a command wrapped in a thin veil of courtesy, a reminder that any failure to comply would not be tolerated. Caspian, reluctantly urged Jackson's dominance, let out a resigned sigh and waved his hand dismissively. The wrinkles on his forehead deepened, clearly displaying his annoyance at the situation. Yet, he knew better than to cross paths with Jackson, fully aware of the consequences that awaited him. "Of course," Caspian asserted begrudgingly, his words laced with a sense of resignation. The corners of his lips twitched with frustration, though he tried his best to conceal it. "I am fully aware of the consequences of crossing you," he added, his tone tinged with reluctancy. It was a reluctant concession, a submission to the power before him. Lara emitted a sly chuckle, her amusement palpable. "Let the play commence," she remarked, her voice filled with anticipation, clearly relishing the unfolding events. Her eyes gleamed with a mixture of mischief and excitement. Seated in the descending gallery of a small amphitheater-like room, I faced the panel along with Lucas. Our eyes fixed on the elderly robed men behind the raised desk. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation, punctuated only by the sound of shuffling papers and the collective tension that seemed to grip every person in the room. After an agonizingly long moment of nerve-wracking silence, one of the elderly men, taller than his four companions, rose from his seat and cleared his throat. His deep, resonant voice reverberated across the room, causing a ripple of unease among the audience. "On behalf of the Adventurers Guild and this esteemed panel," he began, his voice carrying authority, "I hereby declare the conjurer, Lucas Wykes, formally stripped of his A-class ranking for sabotage and endangerment of his party members during a treacherous dungeon excursion." His words hung heavily in the air, another blow to Lucas's already tarnished reputation. Furthermore, the elderly man continued with a stern gaze, "He is prohibited from re-enlisting as an adventurer unless otherwise stated by the guild." The weight of his pronouncement echoed throughout the room, leaving a somber vibe in its wake. "You may now hand in your card," he concluded, gesturing towards Lucas. A thick bearded panel member seated next to the one who had just spoken raised his gavel and brought it down with a resounding thud, the sound reverberating through the chamber. Lucas reluctantly reached into his pocket, retrieving his enchanted card, and handed it over with a mixture of resignation and defiance. It was a symbol of his past accomplishments, now rendered meaningless by this verdict. But amidst the stifling atmosphere, Jackson, who now seemed to have morphed into a formidable advocate, stood firm, his voice steady yet assertive. "I object to that," he declared with a quiet determination, his lawyer-like demeanor more apparent than ever. The room buzzed with a renewed sense of curiosity as all eyes turned towards him. "The sentence is still too lenient, considering the gravity of Lucas's actions," he continued, his tone laced with conviction. The weary judge, his voice tinged with exhaustion, replied, "Excuse me, Mr. Morgan, but there weren't any fatalities, let alone significant damage incurred." Jackson's eyes narrowed, his voice cutting through the air like a sharpened blade. "And should there have been victims?" he retorted challengingly. The question seemed to hold the room hostage, an uncomfortable truth lingering in its wake. Attempting to intervene, Lucas's father, Otis Wykes, rose from his seat, but before he could utter a word, Jackson swiftly silenced him. "You are not allowed to speak here, Mr. Wykes," he admonished sharply, causing a visible flinch from the older man. "He injured his party members and could have caused their deaths with his reckless actions," Jackson pressed on, his words piercing the silence and resonating with a sense of betrayal. The weight of those words hung heavily in the air, their gravity leaving an indelible mark on the proceedings. The judge hesitated, his brow furrowing as he took a moment to carefully consider Jackson's words. The courtroom was filled with a heavy tension, the air almost tangible with anticipation. Every eye in the room was glued to the scene unfolding before them. Finally, the judge turned back to face Jackson, his expression betraying a reluctant interest in the proposal. His voice held a touch of curiosity as he inquired, "And what, in your opinion, should be the appropriate course of action?" Jackson's unwavering gaze remained fixated on Lucas, his intense stare seeming to penetrate through to the very depths of his soul. There was something about the determination in Jackson's eyes that sent shivers down Otis's spine. This was a formidable opponent he was facing. In a firm and resolute tone, Jackson replied, each word resonating with the weight of conviction. "Imprison him," he stated, his voice carrying a certainty. "And let his punishment be 100 whippings every morning and evening, in addition to a substantial financial compensation." A sharp intake of breath escaped Otis's lips as he gritted his teeth, a flicker of shame crossing his face. This was not the outcome he had hoped for, but now the entire realm of Zyrus would learn of Lucas's heinous deeds. The repercussions would reach far beyond his own life, forever staining the legacy of their once proud family name. Initially, Otis had pleaded that the courtroom be kept devoid of prying eyes. However, his wishes had been denied, and now the hall was filled to the brim with nobles and journalists, their hungry eyes gleaming with excitement at the prospect of witnessing the downfall of a once promising adventurer and noble. Their ink-stained fingers worked feverishly as they jotted down every detail, eager to disseminate the news to the masses. With a heavy sigh, the judge looked around the room, his weariness apparent. "We have taken your suggestion into consideration, and we find it fitting," he declared, his voice carrying a hint of solemnity. "The Guild takes matters of safety and accountability with utmost seriousness, and we hope that this decision will serve as a stark lesson to all adventurers. We will not tolerate the jeopardizing of lives, be it one's own or another's." Lucas's face turned to horror, his entire body shaking with fear as he realized the full extent of his punishment, while his father walked out, gritting his teeth without looking at him. As someone I thought was his brother stood there, I saw a look of anger on his face, but he also walked away without saying anything. The silence that followed the announcement was deafening, the weight of the guilt and shame in the room palpable. The scene had come to a close, leaving everyone in a state of shock and disbelief. In a decisive gesture, Jackson's hand beckoned me to follow him. I quickly adjusted my mask, ensuring its secure fit as we made our way towards the exit. One of the judges let out a despondent sigh, their features reflecting a mix of disappointment and disbelief. And so, the scene drew to a close, leaving behind a stunned and disbelieving audience. As Lucas was escorted out of the room to begin serving his sentence, the lingering sense of shock and disbelief still hung heavily in the air. "I didn't expect that," I admitted to Jackson, my voice laced with surprise as my eyes widened. A mischievous grin danced across Jackson's face, clearly not bothered by the drastic punishment Lucas had received. "What did you expect?" he teased, his tone filled with amusement. I took a moment to gather my thoughts, my mind still reeling from the severity of the punishment. "I'm not sure," I began, furrowing my brow in contemplation, "but I didn't think the punishment would be so severe." Jackson's grin only seemed to widen, and his tone turned light and carefree. "Ah, the privilege of being an S-rank adventurer," he quipped, his words tinged with a touch of sarcasm. His nonchalant demeanor intrigued me, making me wonder about his past experiences. "There's something I have to do," Jackson said, breaking the momentary silence that had settled between us. I could sense a hint of excitement in his voice, his eyes shining with anticipation. "So, we'll part ways here." Curiosity swirled within me, but I respected his privacy. "Sure, no problem," I replied, giving him a slight nod. Before he disappeared into the bustling crowd, I couldn't help but express my gratitude. "Thank you again for the help," I said sincerely, my voice tinged with appreciation. His assistance during the trial had made a significant difference, and I wanted him to know that. But Jackson waved my gratitude away dismissively, his carefree demeanor remaining intact. "Don't care about that," he replied casually, his words carrying a hint of playfulness. "Take care, and I'll see you soon." Allowing his words to sink in, I watched as Jackson blended seamlessly into the throngs of people. A twinge of curiosity gnawed at me, wondering what he had to do that was so pressing. However, I pushed my questions aside, reminding myself that everyone had their own paths to follow. As I made my way out of the courthouse, a sense of relief washed over me. The trial, with its intense scrutiny and nerve-wracking atmosphere, was finally over. Stepping out into the open air, I immediately spotted Jasmine and Elijah waiting nearby, their faint smiles offering a sense of comfort. We trekked across the beast glades towards the nearest teleportation gate. Jasmine and Elijah stayed quiet, lost in thought until we reached the portal. Well, I guess we should split ways here, right? Elijah scratched his untidy black hair and shifted his gaze between Jasmine and me. His smile looked forced, and there was a hint of awkwardness in his voice. What? I blurted out in surprise. You're not coming with us to Sapin, Elijah. Did you have something you needed to do? I had assumed that my newfound friend would join us, but then I remembered that he wasn't from the kingdom of Sapin. What? I mean, I don't really have anything planned, but is it really okay to come along with you? Elijah tried to hide his surprise behind his glasses, but I could tell he was caught off guard. Well, you and Jasmine should go through the portal separately from me, just in case anyone suspects something, but I thought it'd be good for you to stay with us for a bit before we go to school. I scratched my head, as I tried to be cautious. I don't understand. I never had plans to go to school. Elijah's eyes seemed even more lost behind his glasses than before, so I filled him in. Well, seeing as your goal is to make a name for yourself in Sapin, it doesn't hurt to get yourself an education from Zyrus Academy, I said, smirking. Elijah looked at me as if I had misspoken, while even Jasmine raised a brow at my idea. I'm sorry, I still don't follow. How would I even get into the school? I mean, I might have the qualifications, but not the background. Even the fact that I'm from Darv wouldn't give me any leeway to get into the school, Elijah said, looking skeptical. Putting an arm around his neck, I leaned against my friend. Don't you worry about a thing, my bespectacled little nerd. Let your big brother take care of the small details. What big brother? You realize that I'm older than you, right? And what does nerd mean, anyway? Elijah chortled, throwing a light jab at my ribs. Besides, I'm not so sure about the idea of going to school with so many students. How would I even fit in after spending my life with those antisocial dwarves? Just to sweeten the deal, I added, despite the punishment Lucas received, he will only be imprisoned temporarily. Maybe after that, he is going to be attending Zyrus Academy. Are you okay with me having all the fun? I agree with AR. Note: you can always go back to being an adventurer later. Jasmine glanced around to see if anyone heard the mistake she almost slipped out. Okay. He relented as I squeezed him harder. If you can somehow get me in, I'll go. Besides, someone's going to have to hold you back from murdering Lucas on the first day of school. Good. Jasmine, can you take Elijah back to Helsta Manor? I have something I need to do first. I'll catch up to you guys. I pushed them toward the portal just a bit ahead. Jasmine nodded wordlessly and led Elijah away. I followed them at a safe distance, making sure no one had noticed that I was tailing them. I soon passed through the portal and arrived at Zyrus City. I quickly stopped a carriage and asked the driver to take me to Helsta Manor. I rode in silence, and I watched as the scenery outside changed. The buildings were taller, and there were more people on the streets. As we approached our destination, I couldn't help but feel nostalgic. I had spent so much time at Helsta Manor, and it felt like a home to me. Sir, we have arrived at Helsta Manor. The driver got off and opened the door for me, tipping his hat as I stepped down. I handed the driver a few copper coins and took one last look as he drove away. I hadn't even made it up the grand oak staircase, its steps creaking under my weight, when the weighty double doors flung open with a resounding thud. In the center of the entranceway stood a petite little girl, hands resting confidently on her hips. A scolding mother's pose, yet her face revealed a mix of emotion that defied easy description. She scowled, but beneath that facade, flickers of excitement and joy leaked through like beams of sunlight piercing through storm clouds. With that same half-scowl, half-delighted expression, she gracefully leapt down the flight of stairs, each step taken with a kind of childish grace, and delivered a playful blow to my gut with the crown of her head. The impact stole the air from my lungs, momentarily leaving me breathless, but the sheer audacity of her act sent me into uncontrollable laughter. How could I resist the ridiculousness of it all? And so, in that fleeting moment, we stood in silence, the sound of our mingled laughter filling the entranceway. I tentatively reached out, my hand gently stroking Ellie's silky hair as her tear-streaked face remained buried in the safety of my chest. Guilt washed over me, a flood of remorse for not having been there for my little sister. Well, fam vac, she mumbled into the fabric of my shirt. Sorry. I gently attempted to loosen my sister's arms that clung stubbornly around my waist, but her grip tightened, refusing to release me. Slowly, Ellie raised her gaze, her once bright eyes now dulled and filled with unshed tears. She clung to me like a baby koala, seeking solace and reassurance in my presence. I said, "Welcome back, big brother." A wave of affection washed over me as I smiled down at her, my heart melting. "Thanks, Ellie. It's good to be back," I replied, my voice filled with warmth. "But now can you please let me go?" Her almond-shaped eyes narrowed, brimming with both vulnerability and determination. "That depends. Are you going to leave again?" A soft chuckle escaped my lips, carrying with it the weight of the commitment. "No, Ellie. I am here to stay." Her grip loosened, finally allowing me to breathe freely. With a swift movement, she wiped away her teardrops using the worn-out sleeve of her favorite hoodie. Looking up at me once more, a flicker of liveliness returned to her eyes. "Come on. Let's go inside," she exclaimed with newfound energy, linking her arm with mine as we made our way towards the welcoming warmth of home. She scurried back up the ancient, creaky stairs, her small feet barely making a sound as they passed over the worn-out wooden boards. Motioning for me to follow, I couldn't help but notice the gracefulness in her movements, a stark contrast to her earlier childlike playfulness. As I trailed behind her, the memories of the first time we met after my return from the Elven Kingdom flooded my mind. Ellie, with her chubby cheeks and wide, innocent eyes, had transformed into a girl on the brink of adolescence. She should be around 8 years old now, and I couldn't help but marvel at how much she had grown. Her birthday, a few months before mine, always brought a reminder that our age difference was closing in. While it shouldn't have mattered, Ellie never missed a chance to point out that we were now only 3 years apart. It was an odd quirk of hers, but one that made me realize that soon enough, boys would begin to notice her. The realization hit me like a bolt of lightning, sending a shiver down my spine. Ellie, with her enchanting sand-colored eyes and delicately upturned nose, was on the cusp of blossoming into a young lady. And with that transformation came the inevitable attention from the opposite sex. Boys would start to take notice, and soon enough, they would begin making moves. I couldn't help but imagine the progression that would follow. Innocent gestures like sharing lunches during snack time at school would evolve into tentative hand-holding. And from there, the audacity of some cheeky boy might lead him to steal a quick peck on my sister's cheek. But it didn't stop there. My mind raced ahead, envisioning the tumultuous years of Ellie's adolescence, fraught with the advances of testosterone-filled boys who only knew how to think with their endocrine system. The thought was unbearable, and a protective instinct surged within me. I should discuss this with Rhi, I thought, feeling a profound sense of responsibility to shield my sister from any unwarranted attention. I knew my brother, Rhi, would understand my concerns, and together we could devise a plan to safeguard Ellie's innocence. Shaking my head vigorously, I tried to dispel the disturbing thoughts that threatened to consume me. I made a silent vow to myself that I would do whatever was necessary, even if it meant resorting to drastic measures, to protect my sister from anyone with the audacity to make a move on her. "Arthur." The sound of my mother's voice snapped me back to reality. She and my father came running forward, their footsteps echoing through the house. Both with relieved and joyful expressions lined in their faces. My father, standing tall with a sturdy frame despite his age, quickly closed the distance and scooped me up in his strong arms. A bright grin spread across his face. "My boy," he beamed, his deep voice saturated with pride. I chuckled, wrapping my arm around my dad's neck as he gently put me back down. "Your beard's longer, old man. Trying to match the wrinkles on your face?" "Hey, that's my husband you're talking about," my mother chided playfully, her eyes sparkling with affection. She stepped forward, her arms outstretched, inviting me into her warm embrace. I welcomed her hug wholeheartedly, feeling the softness of her touch and the warmth of her love enveloping me. As she let me go, I noticed the redness in her eyes, a telltale sign that she had shed tears during my absence. "Sorry for worrying you," I said softly, my voice filled with remorse. Sniffing back a sob, my mother looked up at me, quickly wiping away a stray tear with the back of her hand. Though her eyes glistened with unshed tears, a tender smile graced her lips. "You take just after your father, you know that. Always getting into trouble, always worrying me. When the ring activated." Her voice trailed off, and tears flowed freely down her cheeks. Still, that unwavering smile remained, conveying a love that words couldn't fully capture. My father wrapped his arm around Mother's shoulder, drawing her close. "Your mother couldn't sleep for days after the ring activated. We both knew you wouldn't have died that easily, but it couldn't stop us from worrying." The weight of their concern settled heavily within me, and my heart sank to my stomach. "I'm sorry for worrying you," I repeated, my voice laced with genuine remorse. "Thankfully," my father continued, his voice tinged with relief, "the status on the masked swordsman, or note, was updated at Guildhall. It said that you and your party arrived at the branch near the Beast Glades." He tousled my hair with his free hand, his eyes filled with pride as he looked at me, his youngest son. Peeking out from behind our father, Ellie, my younger sister, took a shy glance in my direction. "I seem to cause nothing but concerns for you guys," I said, attempting to lighten the mood with a wry smile before turning to Ellie. "I'm sorry, Ellie, for being away so much and making Mom and Dad cry." Tears welled up in Ellie's eyes, but she mustered up the strength to forgive me. "I forgive you," she sniffled, seeking solace behind our father's protective presence. A soft sigh escaped my mother's lips, her hand coming to rest gently on my shoulder. "It's a parent's job to worry for their children," she reassured me, her touch grounding me in her love and support. "Although, you seem to be fulfilling your end of the bargain a little too well." Despite the weight of her words, her smile held a glimmer of pride, though it was tinged with traces of lingering tears. My mother, a mischievous twinkle in her eyes, turned to me and whispered just loudly enough for everyone to hear, "And don't worry about your sister, Arthur. She was waiting anxiously by the window the whole day since your friend, Elijah, came in with Jasmine." A playful smirk tugged at her lips. Gasping, my little sister Ellie clung to our mother, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Mom, that was supposed to be a secret," she protested, pretending to scold her. The room erupted in laughter, the sound filling the air with warmth and joy. I couldn't help but join in, feeling the stress of my recent adventures melt away in the presence of my loving family. "I guess that's my cue," Elijah chimed in from the top of the stairs leading to the second floor. My newfound friend had been waiting for our little family reunion to end with Uncle Vincent and Aunt Tabitha. "Took you long enough to get here. Did you decide to take a small tour before coming here?" Elijah joked as he hopped down the stairs. "I wanted a break from your unsightly mug," I retorted, giving him a snide grin. "Where's Jasmine, anyway?" "She already went back with the twin horns," he answered, removing his glasses and wiping them with the end of his shirt. Looking at the bespectacled young man, it was hard for me to recall how inexpressive and cold he appeared to be when I had first seen him in the testing grounds. Just as I began to relish the comfortable atmosphere, my Uncle Vincent burst in, his booming voice breaking the silence. "Arthur Lewin, the prodigious son returns," he exclaimed, wrapping his arms around me in a tight bear hug. Aunt Tabitha followed suit, embracing me with a gentle lavender-scented hug. "We're so glad you're back safe, Arthur," she whispered, the love evident in her words. "Thank you," I smiled gratefully, genuinely touched by their affectionate welcome. It was moments like these that made me realize just how lucky I was to have such a loving and supportive family. As I scanned the room, something tugged at the corners of my mind. 3 individuals were missing from our little reunion. Uncle Vincent seemed to read my thoughts, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "If you're looking for Lily, she's not here," he announced, a sly grin spreading on his face. Aunt Tabitha rolled her eyes, playfully swatting his arm. "She started attending the academy last fall after turning 12, Aunt Tabitha explained, a proud gleam in her eyes. Though she trained under Director Goodsky, she wasn't officially organized at that time." "I see, that's good," I said, feeling a surge of pride well up within me. The corners of my lips curled up into a content smile, a warmth spreading through me. "And what about Seal and Ree?" "We're here," my brother's strong voice rang out from behind me, catching me off guard. Startled, I swiveled around on my heels to see him standing there, a genuine smile lighting up his face. Sylvie perched gracefully on his head. And there was Seal, standing behind him, looking like an obedient maid. "Big brother," Ellie's voice filled the air with excitement as she launched herself into Ree's waiting arms. He caught her effortlessly, his strong yet gentle embrace enveloping her petite frame. As he held her, I could see the adoration in his eyes, a mixture of love and protection that only a sibling could possess. Ree smiled tenderly at Ellie, his voice dripping with affection as he spoke, "Missed you too, Ellie." His soothing tone and infectious smile were like a balm to our hearts, erasing any worries or doubts that may have lingered. It was clear that their bond had only grown stronger in my absence. It's good to see you, I said, reciprocating his gentle smile. Seeing him standing there, the gap between us seemed almost non-existent now. And Seal, how have you been? I hope you've been taking good care of them. I directed my question to Seal, wanting to acknowledge her role as the steadfast caretaker in our absence. Seal nodded graciously, her eyes sparkling with a mix of maturity and playfulness. I've been well, thank you. Came up to me and playfully thumped me on the head, a mischievous twinkle in his eye. You went too far there, he scolded playfully, but there was an underlying warmth in his voice. He quickly patted me on the head, a gesture that spoke volumes about our bond, silently reassuring me that everything was back to normal. But you did a good job. Chuckled, as if declaring that our usual banter was officially back in full swing. Thank you, I said sincerely, a surge of gratitude welling up within me. I couldn't help but feel fortunate to have as my brother. Despite his occasional pestering, it was moments like these that reminded me how lucky I was to have him. He may have his quirks, but he had always been there for me when it truly mattered. Nodded in agreement, his gaze shifting to Elijah with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. Sensing the unspoken cue, I took the opportunity to introduce my newfound companion. This is my new friend, Elijah Knight, I said, gesturing towards Elijah. Elijah, meet my twin, Rimuru. Twin? Elijah's eyebrows shot up in surprise. His gaze locked onto as if trying to discern any familial resemblance. Promptly, extended his hand towards Elijah, adopting an air of having never met him before. Nice to meet you, Elijah. Greeted with a friendly smile, concealing his true identity. He was always one to enjoy a good charade. Elijah shook his hand, his eyes filled with curiosity. Likewise, Rimuru, he replied politely, unaware of the playful charade was playing. As we all settled into the living room, we began discussing my time as an adventurer. There were some details that I left out for my family's sake. I exchanged glances with Elijah when I skipped the part where Lucas betrayed us, but other than that, I made sure to fill them in to the best of my ability. My sister, who was sitting cross-legged on the couch across from me with Sylvie sleeping in her lap, was wide-eyed the entire time as I recalled the dungeon experience with Elijah. Her eyes practically sparkled at the fantasy-like fable, but it wasn't just her that became enraptured by the story. They were all amazed at the sights and experiences that I encountered, and I could tell that they were proud of me. You've grown up so much, Arthur, my mother said, tears shining in her eyes. I'm just doing my best, I replied humbly. Your best is more than enough, my father chimed in, patting my back. His eyes were filled with an unbridled emotion that made me feel warm inside. As expected of my little brother, smiled proudly, his eyes shining with pride as he looked at me. Elijah continued the story on for me and told them about how I had defeated the Elderwood Guardian. They were shocked, of course, but not much, perhaps because they knew we had vanquished many beasts of the same caliber as the Elderwood Guardian. I could see a hint of admiration in their eyes as they listened to Elijah's retelling of the battle. As I took out the beast core and gave it to they stared in awe at the dull green orb that was smaller than my fist. Held it carefully in his hands, examining it closely, his eyes intense with curiosity. Speaking of core, Dad, what stage are you at? I asked, my curiosity piqued as I eagerly awaited an update on my father's progress in his training. A proud glimmer flickered in my father's eyes, his face lighting up with a satisfied smile. I reached the light yellow stage a while ago, he replied, his voice brimming with confidence. The immense pride that radiated from him was palpable, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of admiration for his remarkable achievement. A wide grin spread across my face as I showered him with genuine congratulations, truly amazed by how far he had come. That's amazing, Dad, I exclaimed, my tone laced with both genuine excitement. However, amidst my genuine happiness for my father, a tinge of frustration gnawed at me. Unfortunately, I'm still stuck at the bottleneck of the solid yellow stage, I added, my voice laced with a longing to overcome the hurdles that seemed to impede my progress. Uncle Vincent pointed a finger toward the core that remained in hands. Then why don't you use this? He proposed, his gaze fixed on me as he indicated that I should utilize the core to break through my current bottleneck. Unable to resist stirring up some mischief, couldn't help but add his commentary. A mischievous smile crept onto his face as he pointed at Tess, raising an eyebrow in a teasing manner. He wants to give it to his girlfriend, right? He jested, his words triggering an eye roll from me as I desperately tried to divert the conversation away from my love life. Exasperated, I rolled my eyes and attempted to clarify the situation, yearning to move on from the topic that seemed to invite unnecessary attention. Yes, the beast will is still intact, I explained, hoping to dismiss any further discussion about it, surprisingly revealing the presence of a beast will in the core. Aunt Tabitha, never one to miss an opportunity to stir up mischief, couldn't resist interjecting, breaking the momentary pause that had settled over the group. Wait, isn't someone going to point out that Ree mentioned a girlfriend? She exclaimed, her words immediately capturing everyone's attention. The sudden shift in focus piqued my mother's interest, her smirk betraying her curiosity about the details of my love life. I want to know about that, Art, she chimed in, her eyes gleaming with playful anticipation. Caught off guard and somewhat flustered, I hurriedly attempted to clarify the situation, aiming to downplay any misconceptions. She's not my girlfriend, only Ree says that, I quickly reassured, desperately hoping to diffuse any budding speculation that had arisen. Gramps, Aya, Aaliyah, who else is there? Ree chimed in with an impish grin, adding fuel to the fire as he teasingly highlighted how our friends all indulged in playful banter regarding my alleged romantic involvement with Tess. A mischievous smirk spread across my parents' faces as they exchanged glances, silently conspiring against me. They had that look, the one that told me they were up to no good and ready to exploit any opportunity for laughter at my expense. Tell us all about it, Ree, my father encouraged, his eyes twinkling with amusement, fully aware that I would never provide them with the answers they desired. My brother assumed a thoughtful pose, his hand resting on his chin, as if he were about to divulge some grand secret. His mischievous glimmer was unmistakable, a glint of mischief that ignited a sense of caution within me. Well, where should I begin? He pondered aloud, his voice betraying an impish delight. His gaze darted to me, a playful spark dancing in his eyes, as if he was relishing the opportunity to disclose a particularly embarrassing detail. Realizing where this conversation was headed, the dread descended upon me like a leaden cloak, weighing down my shoulders. I couldn't bear the thought of my deepest secrets or embarrassing anecdotes being laid bare for everyone's amusement. With my cheeks still tinged with the remnants of embarrassment, I mustered up the courage to cut Ree off before he could utter anything that would only further mortify me. All right, hold it right there, I interjected, my voice projecting a mix of exasperation and desperation. But I haven't even said anything yet, Ree protested, his bottom lip jutting out in a slight pout, his expression mirroring the innocent mischief of a mischievous sprite. My heart raced, a combination of terror and determination pulsating through my veins. You don't need to start, Ree, I shot back, my voice tinged with a mixture of frustration and pleading. I tried to convey with my gaze that this was a line that should not be crossed. Come on, Art, everyone wants to hear your story, Ree persisted, his voice brimming with a teasing undertone that only fueled my apprehension. Attempting to divert the attention away from myself and onto something else, I suggested, how about your story with Seal? It sounds like there's a lot to unpack there. Sudden excitement rippled through the room as both my mother and Aunt Tabitha exclaimed simultaneously, their voices filled with anticipation, are you two finally together? Their wide-eyed excitement mirrored the blushes that adorned Ree and Ciel's faces, confirming that their relationship had indeed progressed beyond mere friendship. Little did they know, Rimuru and Seal had been secretly a couple since our 8th birthday, their love blossoming in the quiet depths of their hearts. Rimuru, are you and Seal? Uncle Vincent's voice rose with astonishment, his eyes widening as he came to a realization. That was quite evident, dear, Aunt Tabitha chimed in knowingly, casting a mischievous glance at the blushing couple. She had always been keen on picking up the subtle hints of romance in the air. Ree bashfully averted his gaze, a soft smile playing on his lips, and Dad prodded, his curiosity getting the better of him. Vincent, didn't you realize it all this time? They practically had hearts in their eyes whenever they looked at each other. Chuckling lightly, Uncle Vincent responded, his smile warm and genuine, I must have missed the signs. He turned to Ree, a mix of pride and joy shining in his eyes. But congratulations, Ree and Seal. I'm happy for both of you. In the midst of the excitement and joy that filled the room, Ellie frowned slightly, her brow furrowing. Her fingers absent-mindedly stroked Sylvie, who was curled up contentedly on her lap. Both Ree and Seal blushed, their embarrassment only growing as my mother and Aunt Tabitha bombarded them with a barrage of questions, eagerly seeking every detail of their blossoming romance. Their voices intertwined in a chorus of excitement and curiosity, creating a symphony of love and companionship. Meanwhile, Uncle Vincent and I found ourselves engrossed in discussing the possibility of sponsoring Elijah into the prestigious academy, our voices low and filled with a sense of determination. The logistics of sponsorship were carefully considered, details meticulously planned out, and Uncle Vincent readily agreed to help pave the way for Elijah's bright future. After we excused ourselves from the gathering, Elijah and I quietly made our way up to my room, both of us eager to retreat from the prying eyes and noise of the palace. I could feel the fatigue from the day weighing heavily on my shoulders as I pushed open the door to my room. "Elijah, why don't you go ahead and wash up first? I'll start organizing my things," I suggested, gesturing towards the adjoining bathroom. Nodding appreciatively, Elijah accepted my offer and walked towards the bathroom. Just as he was about to step inside, the maid appeared, holding out the set of sleepwear I had requested. Absent-mindedly, I took the sleepwear from her and without thinking, walked into the bathroom to give it to Elijah. As soon as I entered, Elijah's startled yelp broke through my thoughts, snapping me out of my daze. I realized with a sudden jolt of embarrassment that I had walked in without knocking, catching Elijah in an awkward state of undress. "Hey, I'm naked." His panicked voice filled the air as he fumbled to cover himself, almost slipping on the damp floor. Amusement danced in my eyes as I couldn't help but laugh at the situation. "Relax, princess," I teased, trying to diffuse the tension. "I can hardly make out your shape because of the steam," I lied playfully before hastily exiting the bathroom, giving Elijah some much-needed privacy. With his black hair dripping onto the floor, Elijah emerged from the bathroom, still clutching the set of pajamas I had given him along with a small absorbent cloth draped over his shoulders. A contented sigh escaped his lips as he ran a hand through his wet locks, the fogged-over glasses hiding his eyes. "Dang," he murmured. "I didn't realize how great a warm shower is." I nodded and went into the bathroom. As I stepped under the hot water, I felt my muscles relax and my mind clear. The day had been long and full of surprises. I couldn't help but think about Ree's strange behavior at the gathering. He had been distant, as if he were preoccupied with something. Once I finished showering, I quickly dried off and changed into my own set of sleepwear. As I stepped out of the bathroom, I noticed Elijah made himself comfortable on my bed, his glasses now clear and revealing an expression of curiosity. As he looked up at me, a thoughtful tone laced his voice. "I've been curious for some time, who does your brother Ree look like? Because he doesn't look like you. Who is supposed to be his twin, or even your parents?" My mind raced to find a plausible answer to Elijah's question, aware that the truth would be far too complex and difficult to explain. "I don't really know," I replied, my tone deliberately nonchalant. "Maybe he looks like one of our ancestors." Elijah nodded, seemingly accepting my answer. "I see, but even though you don't look alike, you still share some similarities. You both have good looks, like disgustingly prince-like features," he remarked, a playful twinkle gleaming in his eyes. I couldn't help but roll my eyes at his teasing comment. "Yeah, well, beauty runs in the family, I suppose," I quipped, feigning modesty. Elijah chuckled softly, his amusement resonating in the air. "Not only that, he has a beautiful girlfriend too. What's up with Seal anyway?" he asked, shifting the conversation to another topic. Leaning against the wall, I pondered for a moment before responding. "She's Ree's personal maid," I explained simply, as I began to change into my own set of sleepwear. Elijah's eyes widened in surprise, his disbelief evident in his expression. "His personal maid? Seriously?" he repeated, his voice tinged with astonishment. I nodded, a faint smile playing at my lips. "Yeah, they've known each other since they were kids, and she's always been by his side. Ree trusts her more than anyone else, even me." That's kinda sweet," Elijah remarked, a hint of warmth coloring his tone. Chuckling softly, I couldn't help but agree. "Yeah, I guess it is. Anyway, enough about Ree's love life. We should probably get some sleep. We have a busy day ahead of us tomorrow," I reminded, my fatigue finally catching up to me. With a final nod of agreement, Elijah and I prepared ourselves for bed, slipping under the covers and succumbing to the welcoming embrace of sleep.